So that's actually the group of engineers that is based here in Italy, and Silice is the headquarter, and it's owned by the Folan family, and we have a strong shareholder with the Generali Group supporting us heavily. And then you see our operations more or less operating in Germany, in Düsseldorf, in Leipzig, in Berlin area, and also for sure in Italy, in Milan, and in Silice. And at the end, you see that we have an operation running in Bulgaria as well. Probably what you need to look at is our R&D department that we call it the NED Lab. So this is based in Berlin. And this is giving us a lot of ideas, a lot of movement, because it's heavily connected to the Technical University in Berlin, and also to the startup environment in Berlin. So there's a lot of ideas developing in the startup environment of Berlin, and this is helping us really to bring up new ideas for our business. And that's what our vision is at the end all about. It's not only to be kind of durable in kind of utilization and to design beautiful engineering solutions. It's more or less that we want to compare this with a lean, smart, and green approach that we are all discussing at the moment. And so it's more or less a mission than a vision that we highly believe in, that that smart cities can only be reached through sustainable and smart infrastructure. And that makes us so interesting for us to work. That makes so much sense working in such a company. And that's why we decided to move from the engineering approach of single assets to a kind of urban planning approach as engineers. Not really as architects, more as an engineers. And this is something new at the market in Germany, but we are quite successful with this, but because people start to understand how much value we can add with this kind of approach to projects. So what you see up front here is, for sure, this is a classical approach. We plan, we design, we model, we supervise the construction. This is what everybody knows about engineering companies. But what we started to do 5 years ago is that we came up with technique, you know, that we asset, that we measure, that we went to the operation of an infrastructure, that we start to bring in technology, that we started to bring an IT solution to have a much better operation of the asset, the infrastructure asset, and to bring it into a kind of life cycle approach that we always can adjust the asset again and make it better and make it much more improving. So we came up with a mobility ecosystem. We highly believe in virtual environments, and at the end in smart infrastructure. So these are our presence at the moment. Like I already told you, we're in Germany, we're in Italy, we're in Bulgaria, and we have a lot of projects running around more or less in the eastern part of Europe, some of them in the Middle East, and some of them also in the North African area. Here you got some numbers of our company. And you see all those kind of services that we actually do around infrastructure. We're heavily in the railroad business, and we're on roads, but also in parts of the environment and water issue. So let's skip to Stefano. He will introduce you to the tools.
So let me use this one, probably is better. So going back to what Anthony Kane has said, when you look at the infrastructure today, you start thinking at the whole life cycle of the infrastructure. It's not just a matter of designing, but you get into the construction phase. You start thinking from the very beginning at the operational phase and the way in which this infrastructure integrates with the system. This is very familiar to who is working in the transportation sector, because you tend to use large linear infrastructures that have a heavy impact on the surroundings, on the neighborhood, on the cities, and on the communities. And you cannot only focus on the bridge or on the railway itself, you have to look around exactly as Envision is pushing you to do. There are tools that Jeff was saying that are now bringing the infrastructure concept into a more digital approach. But the most important thing that we look into is the fact that when you get to transportation systems and then from there you move to cities, you realize that there is a metabolism in the urban areas that makes the cities act like living beings. So they are built in dynamic ecosystems that are continuously interacting with the surrounding environment. So from one side you have flows that get into the city, and from the other side you get flows that are getting out of the city. So when you are familiar with concepts like related to urban planning, you start looking at the system of the city. But what is very important for us as infrastructure engineers is that the real backbone of the city in terms of structure and workability is given by the system of infrastructures that lies behind it. That's why when we went from the urban planning with the colleagues in Germany and we started to look at how we could connect this to something more practical that was really directly livable by the people, we realized that you cannot get to a sustainable city if you don't have a sustainable infrastructure. This is exactly what Anthony Kane was saying. And this seems to be obvious as a concept, but if you think in the way in which infrastructures are built in a city, you realize that there is a complete detachment between the urban planning and the phase in which these infrastructures are realized, because of different timing phases, because of different stakeholder decisions, for many reasons. But what is really missing is an idea of putting these two phases in which you design the infrastructure, you design the urban environment, and then you put them together. So when on the desk of Lorenzo Saligo I saw this one, that is Planning Sustainable Cities, first of all, he wanted me to buy it. He didn't give me the book, but this is Lorenzo, of course. And I realized that there is a companion tool to the ISI and Vision protocol. There is this guideline for planning sustainable cities. And this is very interesting because this is bringing the Envision approach to a system level that is really giving who is dealing with urban planning or macro systems, is giving really a tool that is very much powerful. That's why we wanted to look into this tool and to reread a project that we have been doing at the end of 2018. So this redevelopment of old railway cargo area in the center of Leipzig that is very similar to what is happening here in Milan in Scalo Farini or whatever, with the eyes of Envision. So first of all, the idea that lies behind this approach is we need to create, as much as we can, a urban circular economy. This is sustainability for the city. Only if we do this, then we can plan for sustainability, and then we can step down on one level of the system to sustainable infrastructures. So you have flows that are getting into the city, you see food, you see material products, you see energy, fresh water, and you have flows that are getting out as solid waste and wastewater. Normally in a city, traditionally planned, you have linear flows. Something comes in and something goes out. In a urban circular economy logic, the one from the MacArthur Foundation, you have to kind of restart the cycle. So if you bring solid waste again back through water recycling to become fresh water or water that you can reuse, if you bring solid waste recovery back to produce energy and something like materials. And if you are able to create a circle, a circular economy within the city, this is going to build, let me do this. This is going to build for sustainability. And this is what the guidelines are doing, and this is what we try to do. So you cannot uncouple urban planning from infrastructure demand and infrastructure design, but you cannot go just for infrastructure demand without taking into consideration the dimension of the system planning. That's why we use together these two tools. On the right, you see the Envision framework that you will be more familiar with in the next talks. And on the left, we started to use this planning guidelines for sustainable cities. Again, the advantage in this case is that you get the 5 points that Anthony Kane already talked about. So you get objectivity, you have common ground with the stakeholders, you have guidance, because then the approach is simplified, education, and improvement. And this is what is really nice in this approach that we liked and we started to use. You see, what is called Zofna's categories of impact is the Envision level. So you have quality of life, environment, climate change, and so. But on top of this, you have a system level in which you identify 7 types of infrastructure systems that are relevant to the city. So you see landscape, transportation up there. And you start working at that system level through the Zofna's categories of impact, so with the philosophy of Envision. And then you build for each infrastructure system objectives and guidelines. This is what, through this guideline and through this book, we started to do. And we would like just to tell you some examples for a specific infrastructure system that is water. In the case of Leipzig, it was very much in line with the German regulation about the way you have to deal with stormwater in urban environment. But this is interesting because then it brings you back to the fact that you have to reuse water, and you create a circle that is able to build for sustainability in many other aspects and have a lot of interfaces with other infrastructure systems. Then I will hand it back to Jeff. So if you look at what we have been doing, and this was done following the protocol, we put 4 objectives for the water infrastructure system in this redevelopment of the city of Leipzig. And these 4 points were then used to design all the hydraulic stormwater infrastructure network within the city. Then you apply Envision again for the single infrastructure, but with this in mind, you can put all these systems together and they can talk and they can build for sustainability for the whole structure. So in this case, for the whole city. In this case, it's watershed management, so you have to preserve long-term renewability, water saving, reduce water consumption, reuse of water. This seems to be obvious, but just to give you an idea, the German regulation says that when you develop a new asset development within a city, you cannot send stormwater into the sewerage. You have to reuse it within the redevelopment that you are doing. So that's interesting because then this stimulates a circular effect in the networks and in the infrastructure that we have used. I hand it back to Jeff to talk about the project.
I need this one too, Stefano. Thank you so much. Now getting back to the project in Leipzig. So what we see in this enlightened area in the picture is the old Prussian cargo railroad station, a kind of industrial place in the inner city of Leipzig. And due to the fact that Leipzig is really a rising city, a kind of growing city, a lot of people are coming to the city right now. There's a high pressure on inner city development for living. Especially for living, and due to the fact that this project is financed by international investors, they really looked at sustainability because they want to see some kind of improvement. That this investment is valuable in 30 or 40 years. So that was very nice for the city of Leipzig as well, because they somehow achieved a kind of standpoint that they really look at in sustainable investment as well. So they took this out as kind of pilot project for kind of future-orientated aerial urban development. So that makes it very interesting. And net engineering is involved in a couple of engineering disciplines here, and for sure in urban planning. And that makes us, with this kind of spearhead service that we have there, this makes us, gives us the ability to really bring in our ideas that we have in this project. So in keeping what Stefano already said with the idea of water, we want to show you what we actually did here and how it already compares to the Envision protocol and the Envision planning guidelines that we have. And for sure, what we see here is that the city of Leipzig told us from the beginning that rainwater needs to be kept in the area, because they are very afraid of flooding, because they had huge flood events in the last 5-6 years. So they recognize that flooding is more and more getting to a problem, that we have stormwater events in Germany like we never had before. So this is already, I think, climate change showing us new events that we have to solve somehow. And that's what we actually did here in this kind of development area. We not only have green roofs there, we also have called blue roofs. So they're keeping the water on the roofs to cool down the heat of the urban area there during summertime, for example. And they store it, they reuse it. These things, I think they're probably familiar to you, but looking at this, you really see what you can do with rainwater and how you can work with this and how you can reuse it for bringing the water to flora and for using it for sanitarian ways as well. The great goal is that you bring at least so that you don't bring so much water into the rivers, for sure, to prevent the flooding. So in conjunction with transportation networks and the landscaping in this area, we looked at those categories that Anthony already mentioned, and we developed goals for this. And looking at those, you see what already has been done there. And really decentralizing water treatment systems and provide environmental regulations for water treatments. So we've been going through all those things there. And what you see here in terms of how we get along with the rainwater is that we connected all the trees with each other with drain pipes, for example. This is a very small little solution. How do you get water to trees? So, and I think we had 3 really dry periods in Germany. So this is very unfamiliar to Germany, that it does not rain during summertime. So the city of Leipzig had to make a huge effort to bring water to trees. And a lot of trees just died during this period. So we connected them all with drainage, and we designed the streets in a way that the water is going to those little open spaces of trees that you have. You might know this. So this is a tiny little innovation, let's say it, and it brings a huge impact. But on the other side, the rest of the water is more or less going to this park area here, and it's designed in a way that it's a kind of pond, let's say it like this. And when it heavily rains, then the water comes up there, stays there a while, and just drains to the soil at the end, and is kept there. And there are some areas where the water is just standing there to bring some cooling effects to this urban environment. Okay. So what we then did here is that we want to show you how we can bring this now to the credits of Envision. We picked out some of those credits. 60, I think it was 60 credits overall, so this is a lot. And but it was quite exciting for us, to take a project that we're already doing and then trying to find out how it fits to Envision. And it fits very well to Envision, and that was, like I already mentioned, very nice for us to see. Just to pick out one or two of those, this kind of improvement, the quality of life in the community. So we really had a series of public workshops that we did up front. So we built up stakeholder groups, and they discussed the whole project. They came up with ideas. We talked about those ideas. We implemented some of those ideas. We had a real nice discussion. This was a process going on for half a year, probably. So there were a lot of meetings going on around this. And for example, the inhabitants of the surroundings were really afraid that people will park their car, because this is a car-less area, that they will park their car in front of their apartments over there. And then we introduced a system that we can keep the cars away, so they got some kind of parking ID and things like that, and so they were kind of friendly about this project again, and it really helped us to get along with this project. So this is about quality of life. Then we thought about leadership, and what I told you already, for me, it's this leadership role that the city of Leipzig plays in here, and also the leadership role that the investor plays in here. You can hear me? Okay. So also we thought a little bit about resource allocation, and so we really recycled the materials there as well. So, like you can imagine, this was an historical industrial plant, so you get a lot of natural stones there, for the surface, and we could easily reuse them and bring them into a nice new place for the architectural landscaping design of the whole area, and that really made a lot of sense. And also the energy system. So this really was a good, nice approach. So then we come to the so-called natural world, and it was very important that we don't build up the whole area with apartments and things like that we keep brownfield areas for recreational approach and for the flora and fauna as well. So we made an assessment of the whole area, what kind of flora and fauna is there. We estimated the impact, what will happen to them if we build up a new urban area there. And we found out, and that's the rule, I think it's an European rule, but in Germany they have really looked at this, that we find areas where we can just resettle flora and fauna and bring in this kind of natural quality back to the area. And climate and resilience. So Leipzig, the city of Leipzig, is really leading in this kind of area, because it is certified with the European Energy Award Gold Standard. And they really are reducing carbon dioxide in the fields they could reach out to. And so they were really looking at this. And so all the housing, the energy systems of the housing, the amount of renewable energy systems around the houses are very high. So before I give it back to Stefano, I think this project really shows that this is a big chance for Leipzig to step into Envision, because they are already prepared for that. I think they're already waiting for this. And what you said, that we need to adapt the standards of Envision to the Italian approach. Probably we need to do this with the German approach as well. So there needs to be some adjustments. But the city of Leipzig could be a partner of this, because they're really open up for this kind of approach, and they are growing. They have a lot of projects running at the moment, so they have the need to do something about this. So I give back to Stefano for some last words.
It's just one thing that was really interesting to me when I saw the approach for the systems. One of the infrastructures that is identified by ISI is information. We are not used to consider information as an infrastructure. Of course, we think about the networks, but then there's also the data. And exactly in this case of the city of Leipzig, when we had to build for energy efficiency, we worked with them to collect all information that we could about the existing buildings. We made a data hub, and through this data hub, we started to build for the strategy for next development within the city. So this shows that information is really an infrastructure that can be used to influence the others. Through this one, for instance, getting all the information around the equipment and the electricity consumption and power consumption within each building in this area, we were able to put together a system that then put the municipality in conditions to identify the calculation for solar energy capability for the whole neighborhood. So getting from data, using data mining and building on this data, we gave back with sustainability in mind to the municipality the information that were needed to identify which further developments in terms of energy networks could be needed to put the community in conditions to be able to produce solar energy within the neighborhood and then giving back energy to the city. So again, it's the circular approach. So this is what we did. It gives you an idea of how the city can plan in order to give incentives to the population to build for their own solar energy roofs. And then this goes back to circular sustainable approach for the city. So this is again considering all the single infrastructures as networks and trying to put them together with a logic like the one that is lying behind the guidelines. This is our experience. So thank you for listening.